We have breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The new college football AP Top 25 poll is out after a wild weekend. Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech have cracked the top 10 in the AP Top 25 poll after a very chaotic weekend. The Commodores jumped to number 10, as you see there, after beating LSU on Saturday. It's their first top 10 ranking since 1947. The Yellow Jackets are at number 7. That's their highest ranking since 1995. Ohio State, no surprise there, remains at the top, while Indiana moves to number 2 thanks to Miami's loss to Louisville. And number 3, you see Texas A&M, their best ranking in 30 years. As we look at 11 through 20, is BYU the best team in the Big 12 right now? We're going to ask that question to our insiders shortly here. They move up 4 spots after their big win against Utah. Notre Dame moves up a spot, same with Oklahoma. Texas Tech, though, falls to 14, 7 spots, as well as Tennessee. They drop 6 after losing to Alabama. And a look at the rest of the top 25 teams. Cincinnati moves up a few, while Texas moves down a spot. Michigan cracks the top 25. We're going to break it all down for you as we welcome you back inside our CBS Sports HQ studios. Brad Crawford and Brandon Marcello join me from afar. You guys, I do want to start with Miami here, who falls to number 9 of the teams really towards the top of the rankings. It felt like Miami was the team that could afford a loss. Does this loss, though, change the way you feel about this team, or did they kind of need a loss to wake them up, Brad?
Yeah, I don't think Miami has to win the ACC to make the playoffs, Jordan, but they do have to win out. And if they do finish 11-1, there's a chance Georgia Tech and Virginia, 2 teams that have not lost an ACC game yet, get to Charlotte, and Miami does not get an opportunity to win the conference. Miami already has 3 top 25 wins. That's going to come in handy late in the year, 6 weeks from now, when the final rankings are released, because most of those at-large teams vying for one of those 7 spots, they're going to have 3 or 4 ranked wins, and Miami did most of its damage early in the season. Now, that said, Mario Cristobal, Carson Beck, those 2 guys, they can't have another gaffe like they did Friday night against Louisville, especially when you look at what's left on that ACC slate. That road game in a couple weeks at SMU could be a game where if Miami falters, 10-2 finish in a New Year's Day bowl outside of the playoff is how it's going to look for the Canes.
Yeah, Miami's still the best team in the ACC. Carson Beck throwing 4 interceptions in that game, really 5 if one not being called back. But listen, they're still very, very good. They are just absolutely stout in the trenches. No other team in the ACC is built quite like them. And hopefully for them, Carson Beck learns from these mistakes. I think he just trusts his receivers a little bit too much. 3 of those interceptions were just stupid throws. Let's just face it. He should not be throwing those balls downfield in double and in triple coverage. He needs to learn from this going down on the film here. This is a team that if you face Louisville 10 times, they're going to beat 8 or 9 times out of 10. This Miami team doesn't control its own destiny, as Brad said, but to me still is the best team in the ACC.
All right, well, another team that falls out of the top 5, Ole Miss, they are down to number 8 in the latest AP Top 25 poll. What a heartbreaker, you guys, last night was against Georgia. Rebels in the lead for majority of that game. Brandon, can they afford another loss?
Yes, I mean, they're in the SEC, so they're in a good spot. I mean, in fact, we might actually see a 3-loss SEC team get into the playoff this year. I think that's very much on the table at this point because of all the parity we're seeing. Ole Miss in a very good spot. They cannot afford to trip up, though, I think, this week at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's kind of showing its true colors here of late. They're not necessarily a top 10 team. They're not going to be in the top 12 in a college football playoff team, barring some type of miracle. OU's remaining schedule is just absolutely difficult. But with Ole Miss having to go to Norman, that is a trap game if I've ever seen one. OU's defensive line, very good. That defense is very good. You know Ole Miss is going to be a little bit disappointed after coming off of that loss at Georgia on the road. Ole Miss has really got to bounce back here, because if you do lose to OU, that doesn't eliminate you from the college football playoff race, but it certainly can deflate them even further to where not only do they not have any breathing room left, but makes them more likely to actually pick up that 3rd and maybe even 4th loss.
Yeah, 10 wins is the magic number if you're an SEC program to get to the playoff this season. Like Brandon said, we may see a 9-win team, but with this Ole Miss schedule, if they lose at Oklahoma, the chances of them getting in with 9 wins are going to be slim because the only ranked win right now for the Rebels came against LSU, who's starting to capsize a little bit after losing to Vanderbilt. So I do think Ole Miss needs to win that game, Oklahoma. I don't call it a must-win based on what November's schedule looks like for Lane Kiffin. But we've seen these last couple of years, Lane Kiffin has lost to a team he shouldn't over the final 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Florida, Mississippi State down there the last few weeks where Ole Miss cannot afford an upset loss, but potentially it could lose at Oklahoma and still get in.
All right. Well, Georgia did defeat Ole Miss this past weekend, as we mentioned. They move up to number 5. You know, we have A&M, we've got Bama, we've got Georgia, as the SEC just continues to maul at each other right now, you guys. Is it possible, Brad, that we can only see these 3 teams in the CFP?
I think we're going to see at least 4 SEC teams in. It'll be 5 if we finish with, 5 teams with 10 wins. But Georgia looks great. I mean, since that loss to Alabama, they've recovered a bit. I know Ole Miss scored on 5 consecutive possessions to open that game in Athens, but Georgia recovered in the fourth quarter, made enough plays. Gunnar Stockton, lucky loss in the tight end, a couple of touchdown receptions. And Georgia's schedule sets up, there's several more opportunities to get inside that top 4 and hope for a first-round bye. They got to play Texas here in a couple of weeks. That finale after SEC play against Georgia Tech, I mean, that could be a 10-1 Georgia team versus an 11-0 Georgia Tech team, top 10 showdown there in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this Georgia team can do down the stretch, especially after that win over previously unbeaten Ole Miss.
Yeah, Georgia's in a fantastic position. I think they're going to win out here in the regular season. Georgia Tech just does not impress me all that very much. I mean, their offense was really struggling in the first half, really the first 3 quarters at Duke this past week, and they were able to rely on their defense to score an early touchdown to give them some breathing room and then build on it from there. But Georgia, that schedule's very favorable, and they keep winning because they've got a gamer at quarterback in Gunnar Stockton and a defense that can seemingly wake up when it needs to. I'm still concerned about Georgia's defensive line. They came into this game with only 6 tackles for loss all season by that defensive line. They left that game with 0 tackles for loss against Ole Miss. This isn't the defensive lines of the past we've seen under Kirby Smart, and yet they keep winning games because they have an offense that can come to life in the second half and a defense that can force turnovers, but also clamp down when they need to. Ole Miss scored touchdowns on its first 5 possessions against that Georgia defense, and then they came to life in the fourth quarter, and the offense complimented them with that, outscoring them 17-0. Georgia just has a great coach team with Kirby Smart at the helm. He's making this team, I think, better than what they actually are showing on the field. That is the sign of a great elite coach like Kirby Smart is.
Let's go ahead and stay here in the SEC. LSU, you guys, falls down to 20 in the latest poll. 5-2 after a tough loss to Vanderbilt. Are the Tigers' CFP hopes still alive with games like A&M, at Bama, at Oklahoma left on their schedule? Could winning out, Brad, get the Tigers into the dance?
Oh, winning out would certainly get in the dance, but that would mean 5 new offensive linemen, a healthy Garrett Nussmeier, a play caller that knows what he's doing the second half of the season. And we haven't seen that through the first 7 weeks for LSU. I said before the Vanderbilt game, Jordan, after that close win over South Carolina, that it felt like LSU's season was about to capsize in Nashville. They lost to Vanderbilt. They're going to lose to unbeaten Texas A&M. Still have 2 more ranked teams after that. This has just not been the team that Brian Kelly thought he had assembled this offseason when LSU went all in the transfer portal and, depending on your preferred ranking, landed the nation's top class in that department. Garrett Nussmeier has played through injury. He's been on his ground, on the ground more than he's been kept up throughout the season. And then the run game for LSU has just remained inconsistent. So despite the Tigers having what I consider a very good defense, this is a team that's probably going to finish 8-4, not 10-2.
Yeah, LSU and Brian Kelly has just been one of those coaches, and there's a handful of them now that just do less with more. We're seeing it right now with Mike Norvell at Florida State. You're seeing it with Brian Kelly at LSU. And it's also just kind of proving out that the problem that he had at Notre Dame was himself. It wasn't Notre Dame, because Marcus Freeman has obviously gotten into the playoff and it might be doing it in back-to-back years. Brian Kelly just seems to hit his head against the wall in games like this where they are maybe even more talented than their opponent, but kind of got it in their sense that it's going to be a tight game and LSU just can't come through with that. I wouldn't be surprised if there actually ends up being a coaching change here at offensive coordinator with Joe Sloan there because of the struggles they've had. Even with Garrett Nussmeier injured, they still haven't been as explosive as they want to be. But I think very well we might be having a conversation here in a couple of weeks about whether Brian Kelly is on the hot seat, because a couple of top 5 opponents coming up. This week is huge with Texas A&M coming to town. It's a night game in Death Valley. I know A&M's a top 5 team. They're the highest ranked they've been since 1994, but A&M has some cracks. We've seen it. Arkansas scored a lot of points against them in a very tight game. A&M's been in a lot of tight games this year. LSU should, and I would dare say could and should beat Texas A&M in Death Valley at night. But the problem is that Brian Kelly just doesn't seem to come through in big games like this.
All right, that's something to pay attention to for sure. Let's lastly end here with the Big 12. Texas Tech obviously falls to unranked ASU. BYU, we saw them top Utah in a big game. Is BYU clearly, Brandon, the best team in this conference?
No, it's still Texas Tech. They're built different in the trenches. They're going to lose a game here at some point, and they just got it out of the way now. Now, let's also consider that they were playing without their starting quarterback. He's been out with an injury. Will Hammond, we saw him come in on the road previously this season at Utah and led him to a big win, but that still kind of messes with your rhythm, especially if you're going on the road against a well-coached team like Arizona State, where they had a lot kind of going on their side, being in the home crowd, also getting their injured quarterback, Sam Leavitt, back, and then being re-energized there. And Texas Tech still fought. They had an opportunity to win this game, but the defense failed them. But Tech is just so much different from all the other teams in the Big 12 in the trenches. They're built to win a championship. I think Tech's going to be able to bounce back in a big way. And now that they've got this one loss out of their way, and I think will probably motivate them going here down the stretch.
I'm with Brandon here. Texas Tech still my mid-season Big 12 favorite despite that loss at Arizona State. But give Keilani Sitake and the BYU Cougars their due. I mean, for a team that lost its quarterback before the season to start 7-0, do so with several close wins, beating Utah at home as an underdog, by the way, is something I didn't expect, and I don't think a lot of national guys did either. So I'm just surprised right now that BYU is one of the lone remaining front runners, in that conference. I know it's 1 or 2 games separating about 8 or 9 teams there in the Big 12, but Texas Tech is the team that I thought would be unbeaten heading into Week 9, not BYU. So hats off to Sitake and the job that he's done so far.
Got to give credit where credit is due. We'll leave it there for the moment. You guys get some more college football analysis, predictions on the College Football Insiders podcast. The guys deliver the biggest stories behind the headlines in college football. All you got to do, scan that QR code on your screen and watch and listen wherever you get your podcasts.